feel a bit like Miss Honey, the way that my hair has decided to flick outwards today. Or Pippi Longstocking. Her plaits do that as well, don't they? Hello, my lovely friends. I have forgotten entirely what I was going to say then. I'm not very well, so that'll be the brain fog. And I apologise if this ends up being quite rambly and incoherent, because there's a good chance that that might happen. But I was determined to push through it because I haven't done a proper traditional style podcast update for a very long time, and I've got some really fantastic finished objects from kind of over the Christmas period and New Year. And I don't actually remember when my last episode was, but I think it was late November, so and it's now early February, so I have at least 2 months of knitting to catch you up on. I've got 3 finished objects, I think. Do I? Am I wearing one? No. Yes, I have 3 finished objects to talk about today, and then also 3 whips. And I actually have some new acquisitions, which is very exciting because I have not been acquiring much yarn lately because I'm trying to de-stash a little bit. Not that I have a stash, but I've been trying to use up kind of some odd remnants from frogged projects, and also scraps I do have a lot of. So there's been a couple of scrappy projects on the go as well. But we might as well start at the very beginning. And this first finished object I'm incredibly proud of, and I have been enjoying it very, very much. There was a slight sneak preview at New Year on my Instagram, but this is the first time it's ever been out in the open. This is my Summer Farm sweater, which is a free online PDF pattern by Lynn and Douglas Barr, which I believe is on the website sweaterscapes.com. And the Sweaterscapes website has, I want to say, 12 or 15 really fabulous kind of scenic landscape images as jumper patterns. And I'm very determined to do one of the others at some point. They are all intarsia, so it's quite a bit of mental effort, but they're fabulous and they're free. So what more do you really want? I have to show you the back. The back is not as exciting, but there is a design on the back too. I did change the chart for my sweater, so I omitted, there's kind of a large tree up this part here that I just decided to really feeling it, to be honest. But it's still fabulous nonetheless. I don't think I changed anything about the chart for the front, apart from the colours. So my jumper is knit actually in 3 strands of yarn, and it's a combination that honestly I've been thrilled with. It's 1 strand of Drops brushed alpaca silk, 1 of silk mohair, and then 1 of Drops flora as well. And to be honest, the fabric is lush. And I was such a hater of the Drops brushed alpaca silk the last time I used it, which I sort of did go off on one a little bit in the last video I put out, which was a kind of roundup of some of the yarns that I used last year. But you know what? It's redeemed itself in my eyes since this, because it's definitely the softest, warmest, comfiest thing I've ever worn. And to be honest, I would love to do the same combination for a monochrome sweater pattern in the future, because it is just incredibly comfy. It does put fluff on everything I own and wear and touch, but to be honest, that has calmed down a lot since it was finished and it has been blocked. Although while I was knitting it, it was like just me and the lint roller against the world, really. That being said, I'm a huge fan. I recognise that the pattern is lacking in size range, which I don't know, I wasn't particularly fussy about the fit of mine, and I actually ended up knitting all 3 sizes, so it only comes in 3 sizes. I ended up only knitting all 3 sizes at some point in the pattern because I did do quite a few modifications. So the first modification I did was adding some decreases for the armhole, because I really dislike when jumper patterns have no underarm shaping. I don't like the way that it makes the bulk of the yoke kind of stick out at the top of the arm, if that makes sense. And so even the tiniest amount of underarm shaping is a game changer for me. So all I had done with this, because it only comes in 3 sizes, I'd cast on the smallest size. No, that's a lie, it's the wrong way around. The largest size for the body. And honestly, I feel like even though there are only 3 sizes, there's not really a lot of variation in them either. It's a matter of like 6 stitches per size. It's nothing. So I think if you wanted a more particular fit, you definitely have to put a lot more work into working out your gauge and altering the chart to fit the size that you want. But that being said, I think if you're, an intermediate or an advanced knitter, the chart does exist for that and it would be very doable. So for mine, I cast on the largest size for the body and then decreased by 6 stitches at either side on the front and back for the underarms. So 12 stitches in total for each armhole, technically. And that left me with the pattern for the smallest size for the top of the yoke. So as you can see, the difference between the largest and the smallest sizes is kind of that, which is nothing really in the grand scheme of fit. And then also for the arms, I honestly didn't follow the pattern at all. I knew what I was going to do, and so I kind of just worked away with it. The armholes were very, very deep, so I did actually cast off at the point where the pattern instructed that the armholes should start. But I still think that they are incredibly deep. I quite like the look. I like a batwing jumper, and it kind of has that vibe. It's not obviously as extreme as a true batwing, but it's getting there. And then I just decreased very rapidly towards the cuff for the top of the sleeve. Um, and the cuffs, even then, are still quite loose on my hands and wrists, but it's not enough that it bothers me. They don't fall down, and they're a good length for me, so I'm happy with the fit. I'd also changed the ribbing so that it was 1x1 rib rather than 2x2, because I kind of wanted the elasticity to cinch the bottom ribbing in so that the jumper would kind of fold over itself. And what I do plan on doing whenever I have a minute, I have a lot of minutes at the moment, I'm just not using them very efficiently. I mean to go back and put a thread of elastic through the bottom just to try and bring the ribbing in ever so slightly, because I've noticed while I've been wearing it over the last month or so, it has stretched out quite a bit. And then I think the last thing I did was the double folded neckline, just because I like them and I like the way that it looks and is finished. And so, yeah, I'm very, very happy with it. It's very warm. I've had a lot of wear out of it so far. The intarsia, to be honest, wasn't as painful as I thought it was going to be, because there isn't a massive number of rows where you're working with more than 2 or 3 colours. Obviously, this part across the middle, where the kind of hills and the barns are, is definitely the busiest in terms of the number of colours that you've got on the go at once. But it's over very quickly because the rest of the jumper, as you can see, oh, sorry, the sun's come out and that's quite distracting. The rest of the jumper is kind of minimal in comparison. So I thought that made the pattern very enjoyable. To be honest, I think that was a big factor in why I chose not to work the big tree down the back, because I thought if I do that, it's going to be tedious. But each to their own. If you choose to knit this pattern, you might want to do that. And everybody feels differently about intarsia and different techniques, don't they? So how is my face in the only square of sunlight in this room? It's quite an achievement, really. Oh, I feel like it's also important to add that I truly couldn't tell you if this meets the gauge that's recommended for the pattern, because I kind of had the idea for the yarn combination before I started it. And I did work it on 5mm needles. I believe that's the recommended size. I think they're a US, I don't know what they are in a US size, but the pattern is written in a US size, but I must have Googled it to work it out anyway. So it's a kind of classic Aran weight, I think, or any yarn that meets the gauge for an Aran, which this does. So it's definitely not the recommended yarn, which I believe is Lion Brand Fisherman's Wool, which I've never used. I think it's more common in the US than it is here. So that's why I've chosen to substitute it. Okay, next. This is very fun. This is a stash busting project, well, scrap busting project. And It is. Oh, I really need the sun to go in. And I wouldn't be saying that usually. This is my vitamin D for the day. This is all I will be getting. Should probably learn to accept it. So my next finished object actually contains a current whip. And I was so excited for the release of this pattern. I was kind of stalking it on Instagram in the lead up to the release. And then the day that it was released, I bought the pattern and I cast it on. And I finished it in a weekend. I think it took me like 3 days maybe. This is the Knitter's Tote by Svana. I don't know where she's from, so I don't know if I'm pronouncing that correctly. But this is a wonderful pattern. It's really exciting to knit up and goes by very quickly. And I know felted projects are kind of all the rage at the moment, so I'm glad to see people appreciating that technique. And I haven't actually knit any of the popular felting patterns that have been out recently. Like I've not done sailor slippers or anything like that because I just don't need them. They're very cool, but I wouldn't wear them. But I was excited to do this little tote bag, which I think turned out spectacularly well. And this was actually knit up using the remnants of my Eastex Alaphos Lopi, which I had used for the Planet sweater. The brain fog is bad. And then also for a self-drafted moss stitch sweater that I knit in the autumn. And I wasn't really sure how well this yarn was going to felt because I was watching it in the washing machine for a long time and it didn't really look like it was doing anything. And the recommended yarn for the pattern is Drop Snow, which is a great choice for felting. It felts really well. It's a roving, you know. This is a much more toothy wool. And I did believe that it was going to felt well, and I know that it does, and it has done, to be honest. But it definitely took a lot longer to get there than I had expected. But hey, it all worked out at the end, so it was worth it. I do wish that I'd picked a slightly different colour for the text, just because as soon as it had been felted, I realised that it really did blend into the stripes there behind it. But I only did the stripy pattern because I had these colours to use up, and it was just one way of organising them. So it ticked a lot of boxes for me. I busted some scraps and ended up with a new project bag in the process, which is very exciting. I do plan on making some more. There's a slightly larger version. This is the small size. I believe it comes in small and large, and then there's two variations for the handles. You can do the tote bag strap like I did, just because I didn't have that much of the yellow yarn to use, or you can do tie handles if you've got more. But yeah, I'm planning on doing some as gifts for friends who knit, just because it worked up so quickly and was pretty enjoyable. It's on 8mm needles, and yeah, it's kind of worked as soon as you've done the bottom panel. It's in the round, so it's really straightforward. And there's a lot of options for the text as well. I think you can kind of customize it and put what you like on there, which is fun. So yeah, it's a pattern that I will definitely make again and would wholeheartedly recommend. So this is the City Hiker Beanie by Milena Paulina, and it's a very quirky pattern. I like it in concept a lot, but this is the second one that I've tried to knit and I've never been quite convinced by the execution, although I feel like it's definitely a skill issue on my part. I don't believe that there's anything materially wrong with the pattern. I think because I was trying to do this in scraps, I'm not sure that the gauge was quite right. It's a tricky one because when I measure it blocked, it meets the gauge properly, but I didn't use the right needle size that the pattern recommends. I think I sized up, and it meant that the tension was so incredibly tight all the way through that it was really hard on my hands and wrists. And I don't often get that, but it was knit on, I think, 6 or 7mm needles, and it's definitely a chunky gauge. So I don't quite know what the solution is there, but even though it was a quick knit because, you know, the yardage is not huge and it's quite a small hat, it was quite painful to sort of work on. And I think it took me a lot longer because of that, because I was having to take more breaks and kind of not feeling like picking it up because it was giving me such bad RSI, which I don't often get from knitting, and I do a lot, like hours a day. But as soon as the tension changes, that's when I really notice you know, myself being a bit more prone to injury. I think it's very cute in concept. I am just not sure how I feel about the size. So I knit the smallest size because that was the size which was recommended for my head circumference. Um, I feel like if I was doing it myself and if I was making some different pattern modifications, because I followed the pattern to the letter for a change, which is not like me, but because I hadn't done it before, I didn't really know what it was going to turn out like. I'm not a huge fan of how pointy the top of the hat is, because I find that whenever it's on the head, it looks slightly questionable. And also, the double folded brim isn't quite as cinched as I would like it to be for a beanie. Generally, I think I'm used to the folded brim of a hat kind of keeping it all in and being having quite a lot of negative ease. That's the phrase I'm looking for. Whereas this doesn't. And I feel like it's something that could be fixed by threading maybe an elastic through, an elastic tape rather than elastic thread, something that would give it a little bit more resistance. Or it could just be my gauge and my knitting. So I'm not too sure. I had a look at other people's Ravelry projects and it seemed like a lot of them looked very similar to mine, and not like the sample which is photographed for the pattern. So I would be really interested if anyone else has knit this, if it turned out the way that you wanted it to. The recommended yarn is the BC Garn Hamilton Tweed 2, and it could be that the scraps that I kind of bunched together to make this, which I don't know if you can see here, it's basically a combination of all of my green Aran scraps and some mohair. But it's not very similar to Hamilton Tweed 2, which I think is a 2-ply chunky weight wool yarn. Yes. So there's potential that that behaves very differently to the yarn that I ended up using. So yeah, it's actually still a bit damp. That's why I'm kind of handling it. It's still drying, even though I got very impatient and took it off the blocking mat. But I'm gonna wait until it dries and then try it on and see how I feel. But that might be one for Frog City in the future. Oh, and this is not a finished object, but I have been doing some knitting admin this week. Who is she? But it's something that had been bothering me for a little while. And basically, what I did was bring back the Zachary cardigan, because I just was not happy at all with the length of the sleeves. They were too short, and every time I put it on, I thought, oh, I really love this cardigan, but the sleeves are 2 inches too short. And I looked at the leftover yarn that I had in the stash, and I've got like 600 meters of it or something, loads, basically. And I thought, it really isn't a lot of effort to unpick the ribbing, add a couple of inches back to the arms, and then put the ribbon back on. And so last weekend, I finally committed to doing it. And obviously, I've been putting it off for what, 2 or 3 months or however long ago I finished the project and fixed it in about 3 days for both arms. And to be honest, I'm way happier with it now. It's exactly how it should be. And this is just a sign that if you have knitting admin to do, just do it. Just get over it. Just do it. It doesn't take that long. It's so much more valuable having a project that you are completely happy with the fit of than having something which, like me, you might have put a lot of money and a lot of time into, only to be kind of put off by things that bother you every single time you wear it. So yeah, it's back to Holy Grail status now. I'm happy with it, and I'm glad that I finally had a word with myself and did something productive. And I will say that's one of my resolutions for 2026. I realise it's already February and I haven't talked about any of my knitting resolutions. Not that I have many, but one of them is to commit to more knitting admin when I see a problem that can be fixed. Now I'm bringing the bag back to talk about our first whip, which actually resides somewhere between the land of finished objects and whips. And it breaks my heart to say it, but this is a finished object which I'm soon going to cannibalise. So this is the Betsy Vest by Miranda Copeland, which I finished at the start of January, and I was really sad that the second I'd cast it off and blocked it and tried it on, the fit really wasn't doing anything for me. And I have been let down by vest patterns too many times. If you want to have a discussion in the comments, please tell me if you feel the same way that I do, in that I find it so easy to find cardigan, jumper, top patterns, other accessory patterns, whatever it might be, which have a great fit and suit my build and my body. And yet, vest patterns I cannot seem to get right. I think there have been very, very few vests that I've tried to make that have come out successfully for me. Um, and I only own one commercial knitted vest, which in my eyes is the perfect fit. And for some reason, all of the patterns that I come across don't seem to have the same features that that does. So I was really disappointed because this is such a funky pattern. I love the cow. It's very cute. It was a lot of fun to do. It was quick. I also used this gorgeous Noro Madara, which is kind of brown speckledy yarn, um, that I actually bought in a pre-Christmas sale. But I'm gonna have to frog it because I'm so unhappy with the way that it's turned out that, yeah, I'm just not gonna wear it. And the yarn is too good to lose. So that's why it's kind of been repurposed as a current whip. But I think my issue with vests, not to rant, why are the shoulders always so wide? I think whenever maybe I have quite narrow shoulders, I don't know. I'm not that tall. I'm about 158 centimeters, which is like not tiny, but shorter. Um, and whenever I knit vests, this is size 2, I believe that I made in this one, but the shoulders extend way beyond the point of my shoulder bones, which are about here for reference. So you've got at least, what's that? Maybe 2 inches of extra length. And I feel like whenever I wear it, it just looks really bizarre. And then that is coupled with the fact that often I find that the bodies are too snug for my personal preference, just because I like a lot of positive ease. But I think a dream scenario for me would be a vest which had narrow shoulders and kind of narrow ribbing around the armholes, and then sort of generous positive ease on the body. Because I don't particularly enjoy wearing fitted vests, and I think that that's the only thing that I'm sort of able to find. Although when I compare this to the commercial vest that I own, the body is actually the same width, so maybe I'm completely just lying and it is the fit through the yoke that is problematic on me. But I don't want this to come across as criticism for the designer at all, because I don't believe it's anybody's fault. It's kind of just personal preference. And I will say I have exactly the same experience with every petite knit, my favorite things, gosh, lots of other independent designers whose vest patterns I've also tried to knit. So it's absolutely nothing to do with this pattern in particular, and more the fact that I'm fussy about it. The cow is really cute, so if I can make even the chart work for me with a different pattern, I will definitely use it because it's a lot of fun. But for some more positive news, the fabulous Nora Madara has been repurposed into the beginnings of a sweater number 9 by My Favorite Things Knitwear, which, oh my god, I'm attached to a stitch marker. Hang on. There we go. Which is a pattern that I have knit before, but I ended up giving away the last one to my mother. So I'm determined to knit one for myself because I don't actually own many mock or turtleneck jumpers in my wardrobe at the moment. So this one is very sweet, and it's kind of got not a very high mock neck that's kind of ribbed, maybe you can see here. And then other than that, it's basically just a raglan. It's a fun pattern. I've knit it before. It's very easy. It's very quick. The gauge of it is interesting because the recommended yarn weight is Aran, I believe, but the pattern calls for 7mm needles. I will say I haven't done that. I'm doing mine on 6mm needles just because whenever I did a swatch on 7, the Noro Madara was kind of slightly too open for me. I think if I was using a mohair or anything to kind of bulk it out, it would have been grand. But yeah, I decided because I was just going to knit with the yarn that I have, I'm sizing down the needles, and then for me, something I often do is just knit raglans until they fit me, basically. So it will probably end up that even though I started the top of the yoke according to the pattern, I'm just going to extend it until it's the fit that I want, and then sort of freeroll from there. Next up, we've got a visit from an old friend, which is still on the needles. Of course it is. But I took this to my parents over Christmas and New Year while I was staying with them and ended up putting rose onto it, actually. It was very addictive. This is the current state of the Mitsoni sweater. I believe the last time I talked to you, it probably looked very similar to this. But what I will say is that I had a bit of a crisis of confidence with some of the scrap yarns that I'd chosen to allocate to this project because they were just not the right weight. And they were looking a little bit uneven. So what I did was frogged it back to, I don't know, about here or somewhere, and took out all of the yarns that I used that were kind of leaning towards the Aran side because this is a double knit pattern. And I had plenty of double knit to go around. I wasn't, clutching at straws. So I'm much, much happier with the way that it's turned out now because the weights of each yarn are just a lot more even, and the back panel is now just looking a little more put together. So yeah, I'm very pleased with this. It's carrying on. I also started to weave in the ends as I go, which I'm slightly regretting not doing earlier because I've still got quite a lot of them that I'll have to do whenever it's finished. But I will say that's a game changer. Basically, all I've been doing is wrapping, I don't know if you can even see properly here, is I'm stretching quite far. Okay, is wrapping the yarns at the back of the work while I work the first few stitches. That means that eventually I can just snip these ends off because the tails will have already been caught. And to be honest, I think if I was having to weave in all of this for both the front and back panel at the end, yeah, that might be enough to finish me off. So I feel like it was a sensible choice on my part. Okay, and the last whip is what I would call my main whip at the moment. And it's also a first for me in that I have never knit a cabled jumper. So this is the back panel, which was just blocked yesterday for the Rory sweater by Marie-Lena Tricot. And I'm actually having a whale of a time working on this. I didn't think I would get so into it, to be honest, because I've never really been a big cable knitter, but something about the chart being very memorable makes it really addictive. And to be honest, I haven't even noticed the fact that it's knit in panels, which is usually something that I would dislike because it's just a blast. So this pattern is knit with West Yorkshire Spinners Croft Shetland Aran, which I had frogged from a previous project, but I've also added a strand of mohair to it because I knit the first band of ribbing, and I believe I talked about it the last time I spoke about this in a podcast episode. I wasn't particularly happy with the way that the ribbing was looking very uneven, and I realised that it's not necessarily anything to do with my knitting tension, but more the fact that obviously when you're using a frog yarn, even though it's been well steamed and wound into hanks and stuff, it's not as even as it is whenever it's brand new. So some of the little kind of kinks and misshapen bits of the yarn were really showing up in the stitches. So I'd chosen to put a mohair with it, which was the perfect amount of extra stability to make it look smooth as if I was knitting with a new yarn, and I'm really happy with it. I know mohair is not traditional for Arans, but it's not really a traditional Aran pattern, so I don't mind. I know the purists would criticise me, but now I'm really glad that this is finally being worked up properly because this yarn has been in my stash for a very long time, about 2 years, and I don't particularly like having sweater quantities of stuff just sat there looking at me. So I'll feel a lot more relaxed whenever it's actually being used and appreciated in a garment. But I don't know why I'm waving this around. The one issue we have is that I did not have enough of the original yarn to knit the whole jumper. So I have had to buy some more in a different dye lot. Now, if my calculations are correct, with the yarn that I've used on the front panel, which is all from the original dye lot, I should have enough to do both the front and back in the same yarn, but the sleeves are going to have to be done in this new yarn, which is a totally different dye lot and actually does look very different. They were probably bought about 2 years apart, so, you know, I don't know if it will show up properly on camera, but yeah, you can see in reality, this original yarn is much more kind of yellow leaning, and this is a lot more kind of pink cream leaning. So yeah, I think as long as I can do each panel in a set dye lot, I won't be too personally offended by it. But there's a good chance that the arms are going to be a completely different shade to the front and back. So that's just something I'm learning to embrace because there's nothing we can do about it at this point. Okay, sorry, I had to move you closer so that you can see better because this is a very important acquisitions update. I actually have some new yarn to talk about this month, which is very exciting. I am very fortunate to have been gifted some beautiful new yarns to try from a brand new online yarn store, which is actually based locally to me. So the Yarn Archive is an online yarn shop based here in the UK where I am, and they are really looking to celebrate Asian yarn brands that are kind of lesser known in our yarn market here. And the founder is British-born Chinese, and is kind of just hoping to introduce people to all the wonderful options that exist in terms of yarn from Asia. And it's really exciting because I'm lucky enough to have been sent some to try out and talk about, and that's not something that happens very often. So I'm very honoured. So the shop actually launched at the end of January, so I'm going to put a link in the description in case you want to go on and have a browse and see what you can find. And I'll also put a link to all their socials too, so you can keep up to date with what they're doing online if you so wish. So I'm going to run through the things that I got, and most of these brands are entirely new to me, so I'm learning a lot about them as well. There's a couple that I have heard of before, but apart from Noro, I've never tried any other yarn brands from Asia. So I know that there's a lot more out there to explore. So the first one which I was sent was this absolutely fabulous Daruma Genmo, which is kind of like, it's 2-ply, but I don't even know how you would describe this kind of wavy pattern that's created when one of the plies is wound much tighter than the other. And this is 100% merino of 3-ply. I lied. Did I say 2? Again, this is just a texture that I have never seen before. So I'm really excited to see how that kind of knits up. And the colour is absolutely fabulous as well. Honestly, the second that I opened the package, I was kind of thinking that it would make an absolutely beautiful small scarf. I'm kind of not sure which pattern I'm going to use yet because I want to find something that's really going to show off the texture. So I might have to do a bit of experimentation, and I might even draft something myself, potentially. Okay, so next up, I actually have 2 different yarns that I've been sent from a Japanese brand called Knitworm, and one of them is this paper yarn, which I have never used before. And so I'm really excited to see how this works, because I know that paper and raffia yarns are not completely unheard of. It's just not something I've ever tried. I think I might have to whip out the crochet hooks to put this to good use, but I'm really keen to find out if anybody's got any recommendations for paper yarn patterns. I'm thinking it might make good homeware, like a little trinket pot or something like that. But then I know that you can also do hats and bags and wallets and all that sort of stuff as well. Um, so yeah, please let me know your recommendations because I really want to put this to good use. Okay, and then the second, well, I actually got 2 different colours in this next yarn from Knitworm, which is the Knitworm Merino. And that's just 100% merino wool, like kind of somewhere between a double knit and a worsted weight. I think it probably leans more on the side of worsted, but I haven't actually knit it up yet, so I'm not too sure. But yeah, look how fabulous the colours are. Is that not just the coolest thing you've ever seen? I'm very much imagining these together, probably with some other yarn, to create some kind of colourwork jumper. But I will say this is one of the like softest double knit yarns that I've felt for a very long time. And I know that goes with the territory with merino. And honestly, the colour palette that they have going on across the whole range is fabulous. So I am definitely going to be keeping this in mind the next time I need a double knit yarn for something else. Okay, and the last yarn that I got is one which actually originates from China. It's a brand called Victor Child, and this is the Joyful Fine yarn. And I've actually got two skeins of this, so the possibilities are endless. I haven't quite thought about what I'm going to use it for yet, because I feel like a winter accessory would be perfect, but I want to make sure that I have the right pattern. So this is a sport weight 100% wool yarn. I don't really know what the texture is comparable to, because I feel like it reminds me of something, but I can't put a name to it right now. And then that was a bit of a lie, because I did actually get sent one extra thing, which is not necessarily a skein of yarn, but is very exciting. So what I also have to try is this sock yarn dyeing kit, which I believe is from a Japanese brand. I have been told that there are diagrams on the instructions because my Japanese is nothing if not rusty. But whenever I try this out, I'm definitely going to take you along for the ride because it looks really exciting. I believe it's a cotton merino blend sock yarn. And basically what you get in the pack is one skein of undyed sock yarn. Maybe you can see there. Oh no, which side are we on? This side. And then also three kind of dropper bottles. They almost look like big felt tip pens, which I think is a really clever way of doing yarn dyeing. It's not something I've ever done before, so this could go horrifically wrong. And if anyone has any advice for dyeing yarn for the first time, even though this is probably going to make it really easy because it's all set up for me, I'd love to hear it. I haven't really planned what colour scheme we're going to go for yet. And so, yeah, I'm really excited to try this out this month. I'll definitely bring you along for the ride whenever I do. I think it's going to serve as a great brain break whenever I want to change the pace up a bit and don't feel like working on the project. But yeah, most importantly, thank you so much to Cindy at the Yarn Archive for sending me such a nice selection of stuff to test. And please, please go and have a look around their website in the description box. And yeah, I hope you enjoy it as much as I do. Thank you so much for listening to me witter on today. I feel like it's been a very extended episode. It's like a New Year's bumper edition. But there are a lot of exciting things going on, so I just get to, chat happy. I would love to know what you're working on in the comments and how your year has started. I hope that it's gone well for everybody. And have a lovely February. I'll definitely be back with another video later this month. I'm thinking that I'm going to do a Ravelry Q roundup because I did one last year and I loved being able to go back and compare what I was actually doing to what I said I was going to do, which turns out not very much. But yeah, I'm going to set some goals for projects that I'd like to work on. So I'll probably chat about that in a couple of weeks' time. So you are very welcome to come back if you would like to see that. But otherwise, I hope everybody's well and you have a lovely week, and I'll see you very soon. Lots of love.